Hello and welcome to Adam's Family Play Staggered Acting Boxes Isometric Drawing 101. So we can see that, as we said before, there are three different sets of boxes at different amounts for each. Each one will be built the same. This drawing is already provided for the Alpha box, and the cut list is provided, and there will be 6 of those, 4 of the Bravo box, and 6 of the Charlie box. And the only thing that changes between these is they each get 6 inches higher than one another. To briefly talk about some of the process that went into getting to this step of drawing, when I spoke with the director who wanted these built for the play, this is what I was given. So he had staggered. He wanted 6 at 4 feet, 3 feet, and 2 feet. And then that got changed to 3 feet, 2.5 feet, and 2 feet. And then he gave me this drawing of 2.5 feet by 2.5 feet wide by 2.5 feet deep. And some brief sketches of some cut lists and how he wanted them assembled. So this is where this all started. This was ideas on the paper generating. I drew up a quick mock-up very quickly, no guidelines, and would not be what we wanted to start with. But it's good for us figuring out at least general dimensions and what we're going to look like. So that moves into getting this drawing done now that we have dimensions, and then putting together a formal cut list. So what you are going to be doing is drawing the Bravo boxes and the Charlie boxes, regardless of if your group is only making Alpha boxes, Bravo boxes, or Charlie boxes. Everyone's going to be drawing all 3. So before we start drawing these, first thing we need to do, write our names on this sheet. So right at the top, number 1 thing, so we don't lose it, we're going to write our name. My name I'm going to write on there. And then also for each one of these are all drawn in 1/12 scale. The same thing as our shed drawings and the same as the shelf drawings that were provided to you. Those are all done in 1/12 scale. So I want you to write at the very top 1/12 scale. Underline it. So that's what all of these drawings are in. Now, next step before we start drawing is we can actually figure out, at least for our lumber, not the 2x4, 2x4s are under the line, or for our lumber, not our plywood, that's what I mean, apologies. We can actually figure out what these cut lists are going to be already, given that we have a first given one here. So if we look at the A drawing, each board on here is labeled. So each board that has the same letter means that that is the same length, and that coordinates to these 4 2x4s at 20 3/8. And you can see A are all 20 3/8. This full bottom dimension you'll see is 23 3/8. And I hope you're putting together that it's because we have these facing boards. 2x4s are not actually 2x4 inches, they're 1.5 by 3.5. So we have 1.5 plus 1.5 plus the A board, 20 3/8. So 3 plus 20 3/8 gives us 23 3/8. The B boards are a little different. They are 28 1/2. And since they are the full face of the board, or of the box, we get 28 1/2. The C boards are even the same idea as the A boards, but they're even lesser. So we've got 3.5 for this face board, 3.5 for this face board, which means on either end we have 3.5 inches, totaling 7 inches of the full length, minus 23 3/8. 7 minus 23 3/8 gives us 16 3/8 for our C board. So each one of these is labeled A, B, and C already, and we can actually transfer much of this information over. Because, remember our boxes, if we look down here, 23 3/8, 28 1/2, 23 3/8, 28 1/2. Same thing as we go. It only gets taller. It doesn't actually get wider. So our A boards are going to be the same, 20 3/8 inch, 20 3/8 inch. And then our B boards are the same idea. It doesn't get wider, it just gets taller. It's a 28.5 and 28.5. Make sure we get our notation on there. And then our C boards, I'm only going to give one of these to you, and you'll have to figure out the Charlie one. So when we increase our height, we're not going to get wider boards to do this. We're just going to increase the cut of this C board. We're going to increase where we cut it to make it a longer length. So our extra height is going to come out of this C board. If we see in the general dimension here, we have 29 3/8 and 23 3/8. So if we subtract those, we should get 6 inches. As I said on here, remember we were given 2 inches, 2.5, 3, or 2 feet, 2.5 feet, 3 feet. Apologies. So if we break that down to inches, that gives us 24 inches, 30 inches, and 36 inches. So 6 inches, 6 inches. So what we have to do is increase 6 inches. We have to add 6 inches onto our 16 3/8. 16 plus 6 is going to be 22. And then we add the 3/8 back onto that. So this is going to be 22 3/8 inch. Now we can test this against the height of it, because we know that there's going to be 7 inches for these two boards total. And we have 29 3/8 minus 7 is 22 3/8. So we know we did that right. So you'll need to figure out from this 35 3/8, this is going to be 6 inches taller than this one. C, 6 inches taller than B, B, 6 inches taller than A. You'll need to figure out what this C board on the Charlie box is going to be. And we're not going to talk about plywood immediately. Some of you can probably already put together that we're going to be reusing some of these plywood boards also, but we're going to focus on just getting the frames drawn on this for our ease of vision. Okay, so I'm going to start doing the drawing on the Charlie box so you can see how we can get from our 3 dimensions, because that's all that's provided here. We have our width, our depth, and our height. That's all that's provided here. And we, given our dimensions and knowing our dimensions of our boards, we can actually get all the way to here just with these. So what we're going to need to do is you're going to need a meter stick, 1/8 inch. I would say look for one that's the straighter the better, doesn't have bumps in the sides. It'll make it a lot easier. And what we're going to do is we're going to start drawing this isometrically. And what isometric means is it's always locked at this particular angle, and we're not going to account for depth in terms of diminishing value. So everything is always going to be a consistent length regardless of how far away it is from our sight line, which that means this back side, if we think about it, should be the same width as this front side. So if we know 28.5, that's just about 2.5 feet, just about 30 inches. So we know in 1/12 scale we have 1 foot, 2 foot, and then 30 inches would be 2.5 feet. So if we look at this, we've got just about 30 inches, about 28.5. So we can transfer that. It's going to be tight up here. We can transfer that, always staying on either the vertical or our slanted lines. We can transfer that to up here. Line the ruler up, and then we will strike a line across. And then our next side is going to be the same as our depth here, this 23 3/8. That's just under 24 inches, or 2 feet. So if we look at this, we should see just about 1 15/16 for length. So we're going to come back up here, line it up. And these dimensions work out pretty nicely that we're going to end right on a joint here. So connect it. That's not the awesomest line. Make sure the ruler's tight. And draw it down. Then we know if we did it right, if this forms a perfectly vertical line, which it does. So then we will fill that in. Now, we're going to need to do the same thing for our inside corner here. So it's going to be the same measurements. So if you wrote them down like I did, you can simply follow the line. Our diagonal line, this one got a little worn off when I was doing the drawing, but that's okay. Right from that corner down meets the end. And then we've got, this one is a little bit off, but we're just going to fill it in. So we can just connect those two, because we know we have a straight line right on this given line between 2 points. Our next check that we can make sure that we did this right is this corner that we formed here should vertically line up perfectly with this corner. And that gives us our front facing corner of our box. So we line the ruler up, make space for the pencil, and fill it in. And now we have this box, which we can see is a little bit taller than this one, about 6 inches. Okay, now we get to start moving into actually drawing our boards. And how we're going to do that is, if we remember, these boards are 3.5 by 1.5. And on our 1 inch and our 1/12 scale, that is not going to be super significant on these 1/8 inch rulers. Let me get to the front. There we go. On these 1/8 inch rulers. So we're going to do our best to get it close and at least make them consistent with one another. So what we're going to do is, we always are going to do our faces here, our long sides are always going to be done on the verticals so long as the boards are horizontal, and then the short sides are always going to be done on our angles so long as the boards are horizontal. So we can see that the only time that changes is when our C boards are vertical. We can see that our long side is on our horizontal and our short side is on the vertical. Yeah. So what we're going to do is we're going to measure these out quick. We're always going to measure on the lines. We're never going to measure from vertical through one of these triangles. We're always going to measure either vertically or horizontally. So let's measure vertically, and this makes sense. 3.5 inches is just short of 4 inches, which is 1/4 of a foot. No, it'd be 1/3 of a foot. So we see we are right about at the 1/4 inch. And once again, as long as we get pretty close here, it's okay. With these small dimensions and with these rulers, it can be hard. So I'm going to mark that down on there, and then measuring on the beveled line now, I'll measure out 1.5 inches, which comes down to, in our 1/12 scale, to being a little bit under 1/8 of an inch. It's on a 1/16, but if we can get it just about on 1/8 of an inch, we're pretty close. Okay, so what we can do now is we're going to start by doing just the faces of these boards. and then we can figure out where these hidden lines and what we can and can't see matches up. So what we're going to do is measuring from our line here, because this is our front corner. You might need to manipulate the paper some to get it down here. We are going to measure 1 point, get a little dot, and then another point. So now, if we can find those points, we can connect them. And so long as we measured the same on both sides, we can connect them together. And then to do our top thickness line here, I'm going to take on the bevel, I'm going to do 1 dot and 2 dots. And now I can connect. That doesn't look even. I'm going to redraw this second one. So I've got 1. Oh yeah, I was off. 2. So now I've got my cross piece. And then the end is just going to come up. We're going to have to eyeball the angle a little bit here. But we can just fill in there. And then if we did our measurement right, we should be able to draw a vertical line from this point right down to there. So now we've got our first board drawn in. And then we would do the same thing down here. That would get us the same one. And we can draw our cross piece going down, which is what we're going to do now. So we know that if we look at this one, this thickness maintains all the way through, because they should be the same thickness of board. So we can measure out, same, put a dot down here. Now we've got enough to make a connector. Get it? So if you're a little off, it looks pretty straight with our center line. I'm going to pull it off the dot a little bit to make room for my pencil. And we were a little bit off with this one, actually. We can see that now, but that's okay. This is not the straightest line in the world, but that's okay. Then we know we can measure up vertically by our second measurement here. And we've got a dot and a dot. And make sure you can see. And then we take those once again and we connect them. And then you'll get good at this as you're doing it, I swear. We can take this, and this looks like it's going to line pretty much right up with that line right there. And connect it down. But if we look at this now, I hope you're seeing what I'm seeing. This doesn't look quite right, because we have this board continuing all the way to the end, and we can see that this top surface, when we're done, is actually going to be covered up right there. So what we need to do is now measuring on our beveled line, going left to right, we're going to measure out our width again. And connecting those two. And we're not going to draw it up into this one because it's going to be butted up against that. So we'll be able to see that. We'll draw it all the way down to the front of this one. And we can see now, if we erase this intersection, I have the world's worst eraser. But if we draw this and fill it in again, we can see that. Oh, and then we need to add just a quick cross right there. we can see that this board now rests on top of this one. So then this side would be the same. It would be getting covered up underneath this one for the back of it, and then coming and resting on this area and getting covered up. To connect to the back of this, we will measure, once again, this one would be the horizontal board. It'll be up on the vertical. We'll get a line. And a line. And it should line up right with the top of this one, because it should be the same height as our face board. So if we line those up and then draw it across, gets us our cross beam. And then if we measure, once again, this one we might have to eyeball on this outset of the line because some of the line got worn off. Measure out again and again. And fill our line in. So if we look over here, this line should actually come all the way through. Wait a second. Oh, I did that wrong. This is why you should not do this in pen. So this board, if I see you doing this in pen, it's going to be trouble because you will make mistakes. So this board, our dimension comes straight off for both, so we can see both. So we'll have a line here and a line here. And this one we're actually going to have to use our reference line that we draw here, or our dimension line, I should say. We're actually going to have to use that for measurement. And this is going to come all the way through. And we actually don't have to erase anything because this end piece here matches up with the end piece of our crossing board right here. And I should say also draw in our pocket screws and our butt screws. Okay, so now to get the width of this board, we're actually going to have to measure from this line that we just drew, from this thickness line. So if we measure from there now, we get 1 and 2 lines. And this should be just about on that vertical that we're given. So connect those. And this one, actually, make sure it doesn't come all the way through here. I think that's just the paper. But part of this one's actually going to get covered up also by this backboard. So let's draw the backboard in. And if we look at this corner right here, this height corner, if we think about it, should be the maximum height of our board, because that's the end of it. So we're starting from this line here. If we measure up from there by, wait, no, we're just going to eyeball it and continue it. It's going to be hidden by this board, so we'll stop and then we'll just draw it all the way through for now. We're going to need to erase some of that, but we're going to draw it all the way through for now. Then, if we think about it, this corner should continue all the way straight from that corner. So, if we take this corner again and we'll line it up with our last line as good as we can. and then we draw that in. Just continue it a ways so we can erase what we don't need in the future. Now we've got that length, and then the bottom of our board, there's even some hidden lines drawn on this one, should match up with our bottom length. So we can draw that out a ways. So now, just in case we start getting confused, I like to shade in the short sides of these. And this board needs a top. So we'll take from there on our bevel, draw. Once you get pretty comfortable with this, you can get away with doing one dot and then matching up the lines. This one is going to come all the way to about here, and then and then it'll get matched up right here. So we can erase some in the middle here, some overlapping non-visible lines that we're going to have, and make sure you can see we're going to have one. That line comes and meets right there. Now we've got the top dimension here. And as you fill these in, make sure we're labeling B, B, C, A. This is technically another C, and then this would be another B before we cut it off. So I'm not going to do the whole box because, as you can tell, this does take a little while, but there is value to having these. I hope you can recognize from the shelf drawing that having the ability to see what you're making in front of you alongside the cut list, particularly when we have cuts that are so similar in length, it is invaluable having a dimensioned drawing put together, because then we don't have to do any of the design thinking as we're building. We can just cut these down to length, screw them together. When you are done with your drawing, so say I just did this A drawing, I want you to take and either write your name or initials right in there in any of the open spaces for each drawing. Okay, this is not easy, and I anticipate questions. Good luck.